What would it look like if all the maintenance requests for your properties were handled without you getting involved?
There was a moment where I was boarding a plane. I was in line and I got a maintenance call for no heat. And I had to step out of line. I had to make a very big decision of do I have time to handle this call, find a vendor, or do I just go on vacation and let them figure it out?
In today's episode, I'm going to sit down with a friend and a self-managing investor who built a tool to do just that. It removed her from handling any maintenance issues without sacrificing cash flow, visibility, or control. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Freedom Blueprint. I'm Adrienne Green, and today we're here with my friend, Stephanie Cabral. Thank you for joining me, Stephanie.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Adrienne.
Now, here we focus on how real estate entrepreneurs can break free of the grind and create the freedom they wanted at the start. Now, Stephanie is a personal example of that. She's created the life of her dreams, and she's created a tool to help others do the same. So I'm excited to share her story and this awesome tool she built. So let's jump in. Before we get into the how, give us the what. What does your portfolio look like today?
Yeah, so I'm a full-time investor. I have 19 units. 5 of them are furnished, actually 19 and a half. One of them is something I control, but it will come into fruition in the future. So it's an equity play, but cash flow negative at the moment, but it will be an amazing tool in the future. So I always say 19 and a half. And I was very lucky. I started buying in 2012 and did the majority of my buying from 2015 to 2019. And so really got the benefit of the upturn in market, was able to leverage great financing, refinances to buy more. And so I have a not overly leveraged, low interest rate portfolio. So even with not a huge portfolio, it is an extremely optimized cash producing portfolio. So I've been very, very lucky. And the midterm rentals have made a big difference as well. And I self-manage that portfolio, so that preserves not only cash flow, which made the difference between me being financially independent and not, but also gave me control and transparency into my portfolio that improved my tenant retention. So it just really snowballed into just a better portfolio in general.
I am hearing already so many big lessons for our listeners in the sense of if you're just in it in a few years and you're stressing out because you're not getting cash flow, it's okay. Time addresses that. And second, the power of self-managing. So can you tell us a little bit about where you got started and how you got into real estate investing in the first place?
Yeah, such an interesting story. So I am a recovering attorney and I practiced for 10 years and I really didn't like it. And I actually knew coming out of law school that I didn't want to be an attorney. So I took a job that was a family-owned practice that gave me extreme flexibility so that I could start to kind of look for what else I was going to do while still having some stable income. The trade-off was it wasn't very much income. So I was underemployed, underpaid, right? At the same time, so underpaid, underemployed, high standards for living, really difficult combination, right? Very difficult. It took me a little while, but my mom recommended I buy a duplex. And that sent me into a rage because I couldn't even afford rent. An apartment, how could I possibly buy 2 buildings, which I didn't understand a duplex was 1 building and 2 units. Once I calmed down and understood or took the time to understand what she was talking about, I learned that you could actually leverage the income from that other unit to help increase your buying power. So I was able to buy a condemned duplex in the best town in a really great spot in town, and I was able to renovate it. So my very first deal, I buy this condemned
Oh my
project.
goodness.
I do a BRRRR deal on it, right? So buy a distressed property, renovate it to push equity up, rent it out to stabilize it, and then refinance it to recapture the equity, right? And so I don't even know that I'm investing. I just have a great mentor at the time who's walking me through all of these steps, which was huge and gave me this feeling of what could possibly go wrong. And honestly, almost nothing went wrong, which is ridiculous. And I will say now, I've never had a project go so smoothly as that first one. But What was amazing about that is, and I always share this, I think it's really important that that was one of the most shameful times in my life. And it also became one of the most advantageous times for me. It set me on a path to buy real estate. If I was making the money that I wanted to be making and could have bought the house that I wanted to buy, I would never have found real estate. And so
Right.
I am so glad to have gone through that. So I want to always share that like if you are in that place, this is
Right.
potentially your competitive advantage, right? Because I found a level of desperation that pushed me into action that none of my friends had.
Mhm.
So they bought condos or they bought a house that they couldn't afford to furnish, right? And that
Mhm.
duplex is one of my highest performing assets to this day.
Yes, the idea of necessity being the mother of invention, right? And I think it's because, like you were saying, you felt that shame. It's really an emotional situation when we're in that necessity that allows us to get outside of our comfort zone, right? That allows us to do that big, scary thing like buy and renovate a duplex.
Yeah, in
Love
the
that.
safety of mentors that have gone before you that are holding your hand, right? I think all of those things and a good dose of naivete
Yes,
in
real
that
estate investors
instance.
do tend to be an optimistic bunch. We tend to see the best in everything or what's possible. Now, you have this great portfolio. It's given you this financial freedom. Talk a little bit about what your lifestyle is now based off of the portfolio that you have.
Yeah, so the portfolio's very stable. It really hums along very well, especially because when I started doing midterm rentals, I recognized that I needed to start doing a lot of automation. Otherwise, I was just going to drown. So that has become, even though it's a heavy labor intensive process, that's become a almost the more hands off part of my business, which is great. So now the portfolio has given me time freedom to spend my time the way that I want. So I mentor others on how to get to this point as well. And it's given me geographic freedom. It's cleared up my headspace. My rentals are running very well, even without me being there. And so I have been able to, I live in Connecticut, but I've been able to spend my winters in the Southeast. So I go down to Savannah. I've been there. The first year was 3 months. The second year was 7 months. This year was 5 months. So we're kind of like back and forth. Before that, I was in the Caribbean for a couple weeks. And that really is what I think the most important part of real estate, right? You get into real estate for passive income, the ability to do what you want with your money and your time. And then some people will give their income to a property manager. So then you're really reducing your income, or they self manage, but they're doing every part of it and it's not really passive, right? And so your own choices destroy either the passive or the income part. And so it's been very important to me to drill down. And thankfully, I've had the time freedom to work on the business to make that a priority. And now I can, that's kind of snowballing more and more. And I'm able to share that with others, which is been such a great joy in letting people see like the aha moments that I bring, or like, this is a great tip to use, or have you considered this strategy? Or I just really love those conversations.
Now, I know your life wasn't always this free, right? So, can you take us back before you got all these things optimized, when you had the doors, but you didn't have all these systems yet? What did your day to day actually look like then? And what finally made you say, I cannot keep doing this? I need to get into this automation, into the AI, build better systems?
There have been a couple turning points that have just pushed me further and further along. The one that got me into automation, I would say at the beginning, was when I started buying midterm rentals. And so you've got a lot of turnover, a lot of inquiries coming in, just lots of requests, lots of just all the things that are happening in quick order, right? Over and over and over. And for me, I have a personality that cannot do repetitive things. That actually is in my personality reports. Cannot do. So I think that's amazing and totally accurate. I've tried to tell my partner that that also includes things like dishes. Cannot do repetitive things, but thankfully he understands that. I really started to look at automation with the eye towards furnished rentals. And once I put in place the concept of customized automation. So, like, you can choose to send out a message to your cleaning crew that they're needed on this day, but the message itself actually changes because what they need to bring differs from unit to unit, right? And you can do that if you build out automation. That's the piece that I was really missing and needed. So once I was able to make customized automations, my processes just got so much better. And that was really from the E-Myth, honestly, of like, how do you make whatever you're doing just the same over and over? And I was like, but they can't be the same over and over when things are different. And then I went back to the philosophy of how can they be the same over and over, even though they're different. So customized automation was a big one. And then when I started to get into AI, well, I mean, in the past year and a half, AI has just exploded. And so there have been a couple ways, but I mean, it's just such an intuitive tool. It's so thoughtful, honestly. And there was a moment where I was boarding a plane, I was in line, and I got a call, a maintenance call for no heat. And I had to step out of line. I had to make a very big decision of like, do I have time to handle this call, find a vendor, or do I just go on vacation and let them figure it out? Which I couldn't do. I'm not going to do that to my tenants. So I stepped out of line. I was able to figure it out, but it was super stressful and it just sent me thinking and realized that AI actually does a very good job of understanding maintenance problems. And that sent me down a whole new path of conversation with automators and developers on what could be built that uses the intelligence of AI, but doesn't require me to pick up the phone necessarily. So it's a combination of automation and AI, which is actually what a lot of my processes are.
I think that's very intriguing. So let's talk more about this tool that you built because we just had the aha moment. And so did you miss your flight then?
No, but I was the last one on the plane. I was very sweaty and I was grumpy for at least 2
Yeah.
days and I was worried, right? Hoping that the vendor got there, not sure what they were doing. Now I've got to make calls to find out the status. And when I'm on vacation, right? It just really cut into my life. And it's not that I was getting tons of maintenance requests because at 19 units, I don't have tons of them. They come in waves where like when they come all at once, right? But
Right.
I don't have tons of them, but I always have exposure to one inconvenient maintenance request. And that was the day that I decided that I do not want to be the person that gets the call. And my other options I didn't think were very good. You have a staff that handles it, and do you have gaps in coverage? Right? Because it always happens on a Sunday or after hours, right? So I really wanted something that was going to be very consistent, always on best behavior, trained as if it was a maintenance tech for 20 plus years, right? And what's incredible with AI is it can be a plumber of 20 plus years or an HVAC tech of 20 plus years or a handyman of 20 plus years or. And you can have all of those people in
Right.
one tool.
Right. I love that. If you're a real estate entrepreneur trying to scale while doing everything yourself, there's a better way. The Time and Freedom Starter Pack gives you the exact first steps to reclaim hours each week with real support, including what to hand off, where to start, and simple tools you can put into place right away. Download it for free at adriennegreen.com/starter pack. Now let's get back to the episode. Now, for the investor who's skeptical, maybe they're even a little tired of hearing about AI, what is the honest, practical case that you make?
I get it. I'm an AI hopeful and an AI skeptic at the same time. So I love what AI promises, and I'm also very wary of the consequences if it doesn't do it well. And so, I mean, we've built the tool's name is Pam AI, to put that out there. So in Pam, because we like to call her by her name, with Pam, we've put in place tools or guardrails for the skeptic. So I think it's important that humans still have some oversight into what the tool does, right? Like there are some products out there where once the decision is made, it just runs with it. That terrifies me, honestly, because what if it makes the wrong decision? Like what can I do? What if I know my property better than anybody else? And so what if I just know that that's not the right conclusion? Or what if I just know that that's actually not the vendor I want to send for this one thing, right? And so
Mhm.
with Pam, we have built in grace periods where for every ticket, you can look at the decisions of who's been called or who's in queue. Do you agree with that? Do you want to change it? And which types of vendors can be chosen too. So you can make decisions, you can override all the decisions, and you can set the policies too. And you can not just within those 15 minutes, but even afterwards. Let's say you missed the grace period, you can change it later, but I think it's helpful that you have a grace period, that nothing happens. And if you don't look at it, it'll still run. But if you do look at it and decide you want to change something, you can do that. So I think that's really a big thing, is like finding tools that don't assume that they're perfect, right? And that recognize that you still want some control over these tools and that accommodate that.
Okay, I feel like when I think of AI, sometimes in some situations, I go back to my childhood watchings of the Terminator movie, and based on what you just said with the grace period and stuff, I feel like you might have done the same and been like, "Let's make a Terminator-proof, AI tool."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there were a couple times where we'd run the ticket and I mean, and we've done, gosh, over 800 tests at this point, and I'd be watching to make sure that the decision was right and just wanting to know that if it wasn't, I had some say in that, right? I've just seen the other option, like, what if it doesn't? And then are you stuck with it? Like, where's the kill switch, right? So I wanted to make sure that you had the option of just changing it and like putting it on the right path. Because then once you put it on the right path, great, it can run again.
Right. Yes. I like that. Like one of the things, using AI like Claude or anything like that, I'm like, "Ooh, can I like that like, oh, you're a little off on my brand voice or you're a little off on this. So let's get you on track." And then you can use it 100 times or more before the world evolves, you evolve and you want to tweak it a little bit again, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't use it. It's not a tool that I use at all in my runs, but it's a tool I know that I have. And it's also a way to know, like for us, if we see that you're having to override decisions over and over and over, we know that there's a problem with your settings. That you somehow have not to set up your, you have not chosen, you haven't set up your vendors in a way that are getting the results you want, and we wanna have a conversation about that rather than you just having to override it
Right.
every time, right? And again, we're not seeing this, but this is a fail-safe that we could put into place to make sure that customer success is a top priority.
Mhm. Right. Now, I know we've talked about this specific aspect. Let's back up and can you give an overview of Pam AI? I mean, so what I understand is Pam AI helps with maintenance requests and it does it automatically. So the owner doesn't have to be in the loop, but they get a chance. Can you kind of fill in the gaps, or for our listeners who aren't familiar with Pam, tell us like what is it as a whole?
Yeah, it's an AI-driven maintenance coordinator. So it is handling the front lines for every maintenance call for landlords. That includes emergency calls, routine calls. My, kitchen door is coming loose. All calls can be run through Pam. So it handles everything from like ticket intake to diagnostic conversations with tenants. It will get to the most likely cause of the problem, attempt remote resolution, because our best case scenario is that we don't have to send a vendor, right? That we
Right.
actually can have the tenant self help and solve the problem themselves. So we're going to do remote resolution efforts, containment of damage if we can't solve it. And then Pam is going to use the landlord's preferred vendors and do a vendor selection process. So they're going to look for like existing coverage, warranties, service contracts. Like if you already have pest control on that property
Hmm.
and an ant problem gets called in, we want to call your pest control company that you've already got contracted. We don't want to call the other company that you're not paying, right? And then if there's a
Right.
superintendent on the property. So your existing coverage is going to go first. If you don't have any of that, it's going to go into the general pool. And we look at all the types of vendors that could service the issue in the most economically viable option. So, like, if you were to just use a chatbot, for example, and say, I have a clogged toilet, what should I do? It's going to say, call a plumber. So we have had so much training of this tool to say you are not to jump to a plumber. You are going to go to a handyman. And if not a handyman,
Mhm.
you're going to go to a drain tech. And if not a drain tech, then you can go to a plumber, right? So, like, we're going to do everything that we can to send out the most cost effective vendor in
Right.
your base that can service that property.
In this conversation, like our whole podcast here, it's apparent, like, I think one of your core values is preserving cash flow. That's what it sounds like.
I have so many things I want to do with that money. I don't want to be giving it away
Right.
to bad decisions.
Yes, and that's a good way to put it. Exactly. I love that. Now, thinking through this, what does the follow through look like? Because one of the challenges that I know I face sometimes with properties, not to, brush with a broad stroke, but like a lot of these vendors don't answer the phone, don't get back, don't get out there for a while, right? They're really hard to deal with, like a plumber in this example, right? Or, the handyman or something. Unless you've got your go-to that you have an established relationship with, it can be tough. So how does Pam handle dealing with the fact that these people, these service providers, are typically overwhelmed, understaffed, and more like expert in their trade than in being a business person?
Yeah. So the first thing that we do is Pam sends a message introducing herself before a ticket's been created. She sends a message just saying, I'm Pam. I'm the maintenance coordinator for Stephanie Cabral, Sunrise Real Estate. So please save my number. You'll be hearing from me. The tickets are time sensitive. If we don't hear back from you, we will give the ticket to another vendor. And so my vendors save that number. So right then and there, they know who that person is that's sending them the message, right? And then in the policy settings, the landlords can choose based on like the three different urgency levels, how long of a window they want Pam to wait before hearing back and moving to the next vendor. And also, like, what's the earliest contact time that Pam can contact a vendor? What's the latest contact time? So, like, for emergencies, the default setting is 24/7, right? And you might have like business hours only for the medium level and low level.
Mm.
And then, so from there, if the vendor doesn't respond, it's going to send out a message to the next vendor in queue. It's going to leave the ticket open for the first vendor to respond because they're your preference, right? So you want them to still get back. But now it's kind of
Right.
an open ticket that first accept is the one who gets assigned the ticket. We don't pass along the contact information until the ticket's been accepted and secured so that there's no confusion about like, oh, they both accepted, they both called the tenant, right? So we really
Right.
like keep that close to the chest. We'll share the address so they know like where it is, if it's something that they can service quickly. And we also share the expectations. So those policy settings suggest how quickly are you supposed to contact the tenant? How quickly are you supposed to service the tenant? And those are passed along to say, these are what are expected if you take the ticket, right? So if they take the ticket, those are communicated to the tenant, and the tenant will also get notification of who's coming, who's going to contact them. So the vendor contacts the tenant directly so that you're kind of out of the process, but you're seeing the status and you're able to see that it's been closed out. And you can guarantee that if the vendor did not communicate with the tenant, you will know about it.
Because the tenant will let you know?
The tenant will let you know, yeah. And we encourage that gently as, like, we're alliances here, like, "Hey, if you don't hear from them, let us know," right? So it's
Right.
not a tattling, it's like, "We're on the same page, this is what's expected, if you don't hear from them for whatever reason, let us know." So there's built-in checks and balances there.
I love it. And that's one of the things when you build a system like this that is going to run, you have to think about that flow. And you really, part of creating that system is that you make it optimal, which you don't do in the moment. Like when you were having to step out of line, from boarding a plane, you were not probably setting expectations and working through your ideal list of like vendors and everything like that. It wasn't optimized or ideal, it was reactionary. But now Pam can be optimized and ideal, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was literally just taking whoever would go because I needed to get back on the plane. So, like, the first person that could confirm for me verbally, I was going to accept versus knowing that there was going to be a process that would run and I would be notified if, nobody responded. But if you've got a good Rolodex of vendors, you're going to get a response. And what I've actually found, this is interesting, is that now because my vendors, I've seen this with my electricians a lot. I've got a bunch of them that I use. I've got one go-to, but a couple that are in the mix, and they have missed their window. And now they will text me and be like, darn, I missed the window. I won't do that again. And I have been surprised at the psychology
Yeah.
behind like the lost opportunity. And so I do think that you will start to over time you'll start to really filter out and you're going to want to change and play with your vendors, but like I will say my handy person, that ticket goes out and it is accepted within 10 minutes every single time.
I think that's a really good point. And I think, some of the things, like it speaks to the psychology of it too. And so often as investors, we can feel that we're a little bit at the mercy of these, contractors or service providers that we're using. And you've really like taken the tool, like takes back that agency and takes back that control because you've got a system, you've got a list of people, like you're no longer at the mercy of that vendor. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. If not them, it'll be somebody else, and there's a list of them. And
Right. And it
I'm
really,
okay with all of them.
right, right. I love it. All right. Now, Stephanie, if people want to connect with you or learn more about Pam, what's the best place for them to reach out?
So go to the website, choose Pam AI, and you can also follow me on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram. The ending is the Stephanie Cabral. And then my personal page would be the stephaniecabral.com.
Awesome. Fabulous. Thank you so much. That is a wrap on today's episode of The Freedom Blueprint. If you got value from this conversation, please do me a favor and subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps us out. And then join me again next week for another episode of The Freedom Blueprint. I'll see you then.